What is up? This is Blacklite District, and you are listening to the Brutally Delicious podcast.
For those not familiar with the Blacklite District, can you give us like the 2-sentence elevator pitch?
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty much a solo artist from the Black Hills of South Dakota. I've got about 500 million streams, 5 Billboard Top 40 singles. I'm very known on YouTube for my Minecraft and animated videos. Just spent the last 4 days trending in the top 20. And some people might know me from like Sirius XM Octane. And yeah, I'm basically a rock artist, and I just put out my new album. So
500 million streams. That's quite an accomplishment.
Man, it's incredible, you know. Early on, I was fortunate enough that my grandfather, he invested a little bit in me and helped me get started and stuff like that. But after a while, the funding kind of dwindled down because there wasn't a big return, which I get, So I kind of felt like my back was against the wall, and I thought, okay, how can I get my music in front of as many people as possible without having a huge budget to do so? In comes me discovering like the Minecraft and anime videos. So I started reaching out to a couple of YouTube channels that luckily had heard of me, became partners. Again, shout out to my guy Rainimator, who does my Minecraft videos. And yeah, over the last 3 years, just those Minecraft videos themselves are almost like 300 million views. So it's really launched my career. It's incredible.
That's pretty amazing. I know 1990 came out like New Year's Eve, so a couple days ago.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Now that it's done, I guess a two-part question. How do you feel about it? Are you satisfied with the outcome? And what has been the response to it so far?
That's a great question. I was actually just thinking about it. It's crazy. New Year's Eve, like a couple of hours before this album was like officially released. I got to prefix this by saying, me and my team, I got a lot of guys out there, shout out Tag and Tom George, like who set this up, but we spent the last 3 months, really pushing this hard. The single just got to number 12 on the radio rock charts, and, just a lot of momentum and buzz. So like a couple hours right before the album dropped, I honestly got this overwhelming feeling of just being like relieved and calm for some reason.
That it was done.
Yeah, exactly. I guess because so much went into it, and it's such like it's almost like brings on stress because you're always worried about this and that. So the fact that it was coming out felt like a big weight lifted off my shoulders. And so far in these first 5 days, the response from the fans has been just incredible, man. Like, again, I'm fortunate enough to have these young kids who are just hardcore fans of mine, about to hit the 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. And just to see their response, see all the messages I get on Instagram of fans saying, man, like this music saves me and helps me and does this and that. And to me, that's above any like money or fame, just the knowing that I have a real connection with the audience,
Right. But how does it make you, so you mentioned it, but how does it make you feel when you get those messages and something you wrote sitting in your basement or in your studio right there connects with somebody sitting, across the world? Does that make sense? Right. And there's Chris.
Absolutely. What's up, Chris?
Hey, sorry.
No, we started.
No. I was just gonna say, yeah, man. No, it's incredible. The fan reaction is amazing. I guess. Like you just said, I tell my wife all the time, it's amazing that I can sit in this studio right now. You can't really see it good in here, but I can make a song here and within, a month and maybe has 10 million streams from all over the world. And I guess to me, like, again, some people, maybe you guys have never heard of me. Some people have never heard of me, but in my world and in YouTube and in my like niche that I've carved out, this music is a big deal to these kids. So
right.
It's a generational thing, but it's a dream come true, honestly. For sure.
When you say it's a big thing,
it was shocking to me because.
No, go ahead.
It was shocking because, like, I've never heard of you before, and then today I looked. I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
The accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like I was just telling him, it's Bruce.
Him is okay. Him is okay.
But I had my grandfather invested in me when I was young. enough and helped me, kind of get started. But the funds, dried up real quick and my back was kind of against the wall and I had to figure out a way to get the music in front of as many people as possible with very little money. And like I told Bruce, I had just hit up a bunch of these YouTube channels, whether it was Minecraft, anime, pretty much anywhere that used music in whatever type of content they did. And again, 3-4 years later, here I am, 500 million streams, 200,000 subscribers, and 5 top 40 singles on the Billboard charts. It's incredible, man. I'm grateful, honestly.
Yeah. So how are you dealing? Maybe Bruce has asked this, and I'm sorry, my dog had to take a piss, so I had to run.
we actually just started.
Okay. My dog was like, now. I was like, can't say no. She's a 6-month-old puppy. I gotta go. But now that you can't tour or play anywhere, what are you doing?
That's a great question. Yeah. Well, the cool thing is I'm really like the opposite of a lot of artists. So typically, especially in the rock world, you'll hear that bands make their money nowadays by going on the road, basically. Right. And that is true to a point. For me, because of like the YouTube and like the virality of a few of these songs blowing up, pretty much 95, probably more like 99% of my revenue actually comes from the recorded music. I mean, bro, this has literally changed my life in the last couple of years. Like, no joke. Insane. You know what I'm saying? So, in the last year or two, not being able to play, so first of all, a year ago tomorrow, I checked into rehab because of an opiate addiction. So I'm just about coming up on a year sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
I did that. Did months of counseling and therapy. And then at the start of the summer, the end of May, I actually broke my hip in 2 different places while I was rollerblading.
Oh my God.
And let me tell you, oh my God, like the most pain I've ever felt. And I've had some shit happen before, but breaking your hip. Plus, when I got out of treatment, they put me on a medication that's kind of like an opiate blocker, so you can't really use. So when the hip happened, they knew about my issues, but they're like, listen, we have to use opiates because it's excruciating pain. So that was kind of out the window for a minute. But because of this medication, they had to use like real high doses of this fentanyl, which is actually what my drug of choice was. The first night in the hospital, they actually end up overdosing me on the fentanyl. You got to imagine I'm sitting there with an unstable bone, shit moving around in my hip, excruciating pain because none of their narcotics are giving pain relief. She comes in, gives me the shot. All of a sudden, I wake up with like 10 doctors around me, like rubbing my chest. Sir, are you okay? Blah, blah. Like, and again, with this hip, I had no idea. I just come to, and I'm like, well, they're like, oh, we had to Narcan you. And man, that was some scary shit.
Fuck, in the hospital.
Wow.
So,
holy fuck, man.
And then after that, again, I was at the time about 6 months sober. So with the hip, I was in the recliner for like 3 months, could barely walk on the crutches. And then, in late August, I drove 2,600 miles with a broken hip for this album. So, yeah, man.
Wow. This is a crazy fucking story.
This story, bro. Everyone says my life should be made into a movie, bro. And it's crazy, man. Seriously.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. So maybe this is a bit personal, but maybe it would be good for people that are struggling going through it. How did you get involved? First of all, how did you get involved with opiates?
Okay, so to kind of just give a little bit of context here, my mom died of a heroin overdose when I was 9.
Gotcha.
In 2017, my father actually committed suicide via a heroin overdose.
Shit.
Yeah, so again, story thing I was saying, but so right when my father died, I was just in the hospital for the 3rd time from alcohol-induced pancreatitis. So my pancreas would like inflame and enlarge, and the enzymes like give 3rd-degree burns, and that's again very painful. So they would admit me into the hospital each time for about a week, and they'd say, "Listen, you can't drink anymore." Like, and again, at the time I was on tour. My habits basically came home. I'm drinking a half a gallon of whiskey every night by myself in the basement and blah, blah, blah. And so, again, they send me out of the hospital. They say, look, stop drinking. But then I get the prescription to like opiates, just some like hydrocodone, some like weaker end stuff. And then the 3rd time I was in the hospital, my song Cold as Ice just went viral on YouTube, like 100 million views. My hometown like radio station and everyone like, it's like a big deal around here. So I go in the hospital, and the doctor that was working was actually just there temporarily. And he was a bass player from Nashville, and he had actually heard of me, and we were getting to talk. So he ends up prescribing me this Dilaudid, which is what they had me on in the hospital to take home. And the nurse was like, oh, I don't know why he's prescribing you this. Like, we're so worried. And, they made sure to let me know, like, this is a very strong narcotic, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, I get home. The day I get my father's suicide note in the mail, I'm basically on these pills and I'm sitting there. I popped one of these pills, as prescribed. And, it really, because of the trauma of my childhood with my mom dying being like one of the main like events in my life that always like comes back and like haunts you in a way, So for this to happen all these years later after me and my father had just reconnected was just like, again, it felt like a horror movie that just never ends. You know what I'm saying? And I don't like blab on and on here. I'm getting to the point, but yeah. So after that, like basically I knew I couldn't drink anymore because of the pancreas. I had all this shit happen. I was already on the pills and it just slowly led me to basically going out on the street, as they would say, finding a dealer. I actually eventually ended up with like a telltale hookup. And by the time I checked into treatment, I was snorting 40 pills a day, about 15 a month and going about 500 a week. So it was unreal. And I know that sounds excessive, like, come on, man. But when your tolerance builds up, I mean, they spiraled out of control so fast. I didn't know what hit me,
Okay, so then the next question is then, what was the moment that pushed you into treatment? Like, why did you decide to stop? Like, I mean, it seems obvious for people that aren't going through that addiction, but when you're addicted to something, there's like stopping isn't really something you might think about it a lot, but it's not, you're never going to do it. So like, how did you end up in that spot?
So that's actually a great question, man. I've done quite a few interviews lately and people ask about that. No one has actually asked me that. And I've actually been waiting because that is like, it's real, because exactly how you said, like, yeah, to the average person who looks down on it, it's like, oh, just stop. Like, look at this, whatever. But again, like when you're in that spot, I just remember waking up that day and thinking, how the fuck, excuse my language, I don't know.
No, please.
How did I get here? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't even realize it, even when you're on the stuff for months and months. You don't like calculate in your head that, wait a minute, maybe there's an issue here, because you don't really realize the problem until you run out of the drugs. So every other week, again, I'm going through 500 tablets a week, and my guys still couldn't keep up with me because I'd be out by the time they'd ship me, because they were shipping it right to my house,
Wow.
And so I'd constantly be in these just nightmare withdrawals of this fentanyl. And I mean, my God, bro, it's the closest thing to hell on earth I've ever experienced. And it's not like, oh, just a couple days and you feel better. Like, I mean, that shit goes on and on for months sometimes. So, the year before I had a relapse on the fentanyl and told my wife, and I went on like some maintenance drugs like Suboxone and things like that. But again, I went 80 days, never touched anything, and I just never felt right. Hence the reason I went on the medication. So did that for about a year. And then again, it was in 2020 when the pandemic happened. I had this song called Falling, which like got added to Sirius XM The Pulse, which is a big pop channel. And it was just, it was a big hit for me. And I was basically using that as the excuse of, all the success, money's rolling in, like, let's fucking party. I can't drink. So I'd hit some here and there. And of course, over time, you just more and more. But to get back to your question is, the month prior, every other week, there's 2 or 3 days in there where I'm withdrawing, and I keep telling my wife, oh, I have a headache today. I just want to lay down. Like, yeah, right, dude. Come on. Like, the guy's thing, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was just that day, January 5th, 2021. It was like worst withdrawals ever. I felt like I just hit my point. It was like, look, I can't keep lying to my family, putting everyone through this, especially with the history. I have an 8-year-old son, and it reminded me of my mom dying when I was 9. You know what I'm saying? So there was just all this shit that kind of happened. It was like, look, if anything's going to change, it has to be right now. So I told my wife, and within 2 hours, we were driving 6 hours to rehab.
Wow. Good for
Beautiful,
you.
man. Like, I think a lot of times there's such a stigma around addiction, and I don't think there should be, because addiction happens with all kinds of things. It's like, I vape. Bruce loves his coffee.
Yeah.
But some addictions are worse than others. Some people are addicted to jerking off,
Right.
but no one's ever going to be like, hey, man, you need to stop that. It's ruining your life. You know what I mean? But when you start getting into opiates and it starts controlling you in a way, that's more of a mental health crisis to me than it is an addiction crisis.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
like just the way, like I'm no psychologist, but the way you described it to me, it seems like you were drinking to kind of escape pain, and then when you couldn't do that anymore, you were using opiates to escape pain, emotional pain.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that because, when I went into the treatment center, I only lasted at the first place about 10 days. They were like a traditional, like 12-step, abstinence based. So like I mentioned that like Suboxone and stuff, like things like that, they're very against,
Yeah.
And opiates nowadays, there's just so much data that just shows, like how you said, how it actually changes the chemical functionality in your brain, and it is escaping pain. Again, going back to the trauma and the childhood shit I told you about. So I left there and found a different place that was a dual diagnosis treatment center where they work on the addiction, but also the mental health aspect
Oh,
of it.
beautiful.
Instead of just saying, look, let's quit the drugs and try to follow 12 steps, it's more like, let's try and get rid of the drugs and really try to get down to what caused this. You know what I'm saying? So again, I did grief counseling for the first time and just shit like that, things that I would have been rolling my eyes at a couple years ago. But man, like when you really, again, like I felt like I had to change my mindset because I would have been rolling my eyes at it. But when I really put my energy and focus on trying to get better and really digging down to those issues that I want to escape, man, it's incredible the things that can happen when you really acknowledge it and really try to source the problem.
And I'm sure you probably go through a lot more pain when you're going through that counseling, like stuff that you've shelved away and the drugs have shelved away. And then even when you're not using, you can kind of just keep them away and remember how good the drugs were. But then when you actually have to talk about them, like, holy fuck, that's got to be hard.
Oh man, 100%. Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to the whole, like, again, you have, and then when you come off, like when you're withdrawing off the opiates, because it does block your emotions so much, all of that shit comes pouring back in. And like the first few nights in the first treatment center, I felt like I was having like a mental breakdown because I'd wake up at 3 a.m, if I could sleep at all, just crying and like I have like a little kid or something, like just crazy shit, man. So again, but even a year later here, man, I mean, I'm glad and grateful I've stayed on this track, but I mean, I still get those times where it's like, you just feel this cloud of darkness about to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that feeling coming in, and you got to learn those skills to like, because that place can take things south really quick.
I want to interrupt. I want to interrupt for 1 second. I'm sorry, Chris. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said that, you've got 500 million followers and you get, or 500 million views and you get notes and emails and stuff. Do you feel a sort of responsibility after everything you've gone through to your fans as far as messages go?
That's another great question, because the first time I went through this, I kept it very private. Like even some of my immediate family members, me and my wife chose to kind of keep it, just private because, and again, I didn't know how this would look because my audience is so young. I didn't know how people would like react to that. But so again, like what we were talking about with the mental health stuff, in some of that counseling, I learned that me keeping it a secret was almost another part of the issue, because by keeping that a secret, you keep the drugs a secret. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of gives you that back door to say, well, no one really knows about this. So if someone I don't know is out and sees me like partying, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to worry about it. But now, so I came clean to my fans, kind of told them the whole story, to see the support from these kids, man. And again, to start seeing comments of like, wow, like I'm going through the same thing, or my mother or father's going through the same thing. I definitely feel a responsibility. And again, I don't ever try to toot my own horn too much. I do sometimes, I'm not going to lie. But again, like having all these fans that are such diehard fans, I mean, I feel like I have a bit of an influence over this fan base.
Right.
I can mention something or mention a song or an artist, and then the next day it's like, oh yeah, I was listening to this, and you know what I'm saying? So I definitely try to be open and talk about the kind of stuff we're saying right now, just because it impacts them so much. Like how I was a kid looking up to Ozzy Osbourne. You know what I'm saying? Like if I could have had Ozzy saying, listen, here's the shit I've been through, in any way possible, I try as much as I can. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, and you also got to take care of yourself too, though, which is also extremely important.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Well, even nowadays, they're again, like not going on tour. There's been a few opportunities I could have went out and played. Didn't really want to with the whole pandemic and all that. But now that it's kind of opened up, but it's just hard when it's like you're going back out into the danger zone, kind of like, because out there you get treated like a king every night. The promoter's like, hey, free booze, let's party all, like it's so I'm used to it now to where I can go out, play the show, like meet some of the fans, do the meet and greet and merch and stuff after, then pretty much go get my jammies and head back to the hotel,
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's just changing your mindset, and really, I think, to me, at least in my experience, changing my mindset and being more open to this stuff was one of the biggest things I could have done, so
Amazing.
Wow.
This interview went places I had no idea it was going to go. I was expecting to ask about streaming tips and
But those are the best though, right? I mean, it's more organic and more natural, and that's why we like this show, because we're not going to ask you where the name of the record came from or where the name of the band came from. We want to just talk and then get to rabbit holes like this, which I think in the end help people.
Right there again, your listeners, and then when this comes out, or if it's whatever, I post it, and if some of my fans come over and see it, again, we're having a real conversation here that can really impact somebody's life, regardless if the cameras are on or not. I mean, I feel like that's a very positive thing, and we might have impact from this interview on someone, and we might not ever know about it, but it could happen. So, you know what I'm saying? Exactly. And again, thank you guys for having me on. I love the show. And again, sorry I missed the first one. So.
Oh, no worries at all. Chris, we're running up against time here for the next one, but you have anything before we go, Chris, before we get a bumper? Any last thoughts?
No, let's just grab the bumper and we'll let him go. He's been gracious with his time, man.
All right. Thank you for being so open and honest, my friend. I appreciate it.
I'm kind of solo. Some people call me Blacklite District or Kyle, whatever, but no, thank you, Bruce, Chris, you guys are awesome. Would love to come back and chat again. So
all right, I'll get in touch with Tom. Be well, stay safe, and thanks again. Take care, my friend. All right,
cheers.
Bye.